Welcome back. So this is a list video that I thought, well, this should be relatively easy to put together. Nope. Nope. We're at 17. I honestly probably could have gone to 40. Could have. I probably could have gone to 40. In terms of runs that goaltenders have, every year there's a goaltender that raises their game. This year it was Aiden Hill. Hill doesn't qualify for this one. And yeah, there are some great goaltenders, great runs that I couldn't get into the top 17. So, honorable mentions to Archer Survey, 2002 for the Canes, as well as Cam Ward, 2006. He won the Conn Smythe that year. Does not qualify for this video for the top 17. I apologize. Ed Belfour with a 930 save percentage in 1999 does not make it in. And Bill Ranford, who was fantastic and won the Conn Smythe in 1990, I don't have on the board. There's no Grant Fuhr runs that are on this board either. So this was not an easy list to come up with. A lot of going back and forth on which ones would or wouldn't be in here. And so we're going to go ahead and do this. And again, it is really tough to measure runs by goaltenders because, again, every year there's a great run. Every year. And so let's go ahead and try to get this done with as little bloodshed as possible. So number 17, Detroit Red Wings. 1997, Mike Vernon. Vernon won the Conn Smythe that year, so an asterisk means a Conn Smythe win. That year he was 16-4 and had a 927 save percentage. Vernon's 1997 run gets on the board. The 1989 one doesn't, but the 1989 run was excellent as well. When Vernon was dialed in the playoffs, he was virtually unbeatable during those two runs. And so, yeah, the fact that he's 17th on the board shows you there's just a lot of really good runs by goaltenders. Number 16, and I went back and forth on this one. So for Tampa Bay, and Happy Bullen doesn't qualify, which bothers me on some level. But 2021, Andrei Vasilevskiy. He won the Conn Smythe that year as well. Vasilevskiy in 2021 was 16-7 with a 937 save percentage. Vasilevskiy, one of the best big game goaltenders in the NHL, if not the best big game goaltender. Again, that's a terminology we can use. Oddly enough, Henrik Lundqvist is not on this board either. In order to qualify for this one, I felt like they had to at least have made the Stanley Cup final. So I can do a video on great performances by goaltenders who got knocked out in the first round as well. And I think Jonathan Quick had a pretty good first round knockout performance for the LA Kings back in 2018 as an example. So yeah, Vasilevskiy, absolutely out of his mind in 2021, but there are 15 others that I felt belonged higher up. So we've got two Conn Smythe winners. How about three? Going back to 2001, Patrick Roy. For the Colorado Avalanche that year, Patrick Roy goes 16-7 with a 934 save percentage. So Patrick Roy, that's why I'm wearing the Roy jersey. Patrick Roy, again, if it was a Game 7 situation, you could give me any goaltender in NHL's history that I've watched, I would go with Patrick Roy. I always say that I've watched because I can't give you an opinion on Sawchuk other than guys who played with him and watched him play said he was the greatest goaltender ever. And again, that's where you're getting into that really subjective terminology, and then you get all the arguments about, well, he wouldn't have made it in today's game because, and then it just gets kind of messy. But Patrick Roy in 2001, he was pretty fantastic. This is how stacked this list is. Number 14, this one is not a Conn Smythe winner, but had an excellent run himself. 1995, Marty Brodeur. Brodeur that year went 16-4 with a 927 save percentage. And again, for the New Jersey Devils, they did a really good job of suppressing chances. Brodeur was fantastic when tested. And yeah, the Devils made it look relatively easy that year. So Brodeur's on the board at 14. And again, just look at this. Brodeur, Hall of Famer. Roy, Hall of Famer. Vernon's a Hall of Famer. Vasilevskiy, I think when his career's done, probably a Hall of Famer as well. Which brings us to number 13, also a Hall of Famer. Not a Conn Smythe winner, though. From 2002, so we're back to the Red Wings, and it's Hasek. So Dominic Hasek in 2002 goes 16-7 with a 920 save percentage. And Hasek was absolutely phenomenal come playoff time. A no-brainer when it came to whether or not to get into the Hall of Fame. The scary thing with Hasek is by the time he came over to play in the NHL, he was already older. And if he had come over to play sooner, who knows? He might be much higher on the wins list, shutouts list, and all that other fun stuff. But that Cup win in 2002 was a big moment for Dominik Hasek and, of course, for Red Wing fans as well. And that is 2 Red Wing goaltenders already on the board. So, number 12. And I'm just trying to locate where it is. There it is. From 2008. Yep, another Red Wing. Chris Osgood. So 2008 was an interesting playoff. He ends up going 14-4 with a .930 save percentage. There was some doubt about Osgood when he started to play the games for Detroit. He erased all that doubt pretty quickly. Chris Osgood should be in the Hall of Fame. And when I'm looking at this board here, I have no problem putting Osgood here. That 2008 run was fantastic. And I still think it's criminal he's not in the Hall. I understand he had a great team and he was dragged there and yada, yada, yada. But it's the same thing that could have been said about Grant Fuhr. Not that Grant Fuhr doesn't belong in the Hall, but just saying you could have said the same thing about Fuhr, but people understood Fuhr was a big game goaltender. So was Osgood. For me, anyway, for my money, Chris Osgood was a big game goaltender. Number 11 on the board. Going to Washington. It's not Holtby either. Holtby did not qualify for this list. It is ridiculous how many good goaltending performances we've had. Back in 1998, Olaf Kolzig. Kolzig, those playoffs went 12-9 with a .941 save percentage. Absolutely crazy. Now, of course, they got destroyed in the final by the Detroit Red Wings, but man, was Kolzig good that year. Ole, the goalie, was just in the zone that entire run. He's the reason the Capitals get to the final. I'm kind of surprised that I'm not putting a star there next to his name. I understand that Yzerman won the Conn Smythe that year, but without Ole, the goalie, the Caps don't get into the final. I will say this, though. When your team gets swept in the final, it is hard to argue that your goaltender should be the Conn Smythe winner. So, just saying with that .941 save percentage, just absolutely bonkers. Number 10 on the board. And looking back to 1999, Ed Belfour does not qualify. Hasek does. And Belfour was fantastic. He had a .930 save percentage when Dallas won that Stanley Cup. But Hasek, 13-6 with a .939 save percentage. And again, I said Kolzig, without him, Washington doesn't get to the final. Without Hasek, there is no way that we're talking about a Buffalo Stanley Cup final. Buffalo was a good team, and Hasek made them look great. So, Dominik Hasek, 2 times he's on the board, and with 2 different teams. He's not the only goaltender on the board with 2 different teams, but, you know, it just goes to show why he's in the Hall of Fame. And again, this is where we can come back to Kolzig for a second. Not in the Hall of Fame. I'd be fine if he got there, but I would understand why he wouldn't be there at this point. I have done a video on him. In fact, I think I've done career videos on all these players. Anyways, getting to number 9. And this one's tough because we're going back to 1986 and an absolutely ridiculous run by Patrick Roy. Going into the 86 playoffs, there were a lot of questions about Montreal and are they going to be able to do much in the playoffs, but because Roy didn't have any kind of resume for that. But Patrick Roy, and in 86, he did win that Conn Smythe that year, I do believe. Because there's a Conn Smythe. Let me just take a quick look here. I'm pretty sure, yeah, Patrick Roy won the Conn Smythe that year. I didn't actually mark that one down, but yeah, Patrick Roy won the Conn Smythe that year. I was 99% sure because I have a picture on my wall right here of Patrick Roy as a rookie with the Stanley Cup on one side of him and the Conn Smythe on the other, and he looks very happy. But yeah, Patrick Roy, 1986, that was quite the run. He went 15-5 with a .923 save percentage. So that was in the era where you just needed to win 3 games in the first round to move on to the second round, thus the 15 wins being the necessary number for the Cup. So Roy, here with Colorado, here with the Montreal Canadiens, and again, that 86 run, from then on, Patrick Roy just had this mystique about him in the playoffs. Number 8, going back to 1994. So the 1994 playoffs were a lot of fun for me to watch. Might have been my favorite playoffs. It does end with the New York Rangers winning. Brian Leetch won the Conn Smythe, but you could have made the argument for Mike Richter. Richter went 16-7 with a .921 save percentage and was a wall when necessary for the New York Rangers to get to that final and get through. Now, this is kind of a two-parter because I would argue that in 1994, Kirk McLean was also worthy of being on this board. Kirk McLean, his 1994 numbers, 15-9 with a .928 save percentage. Keeping in mind that save percentage is above .920 during that era, pretty darn good. The scoring would come down starting the 95-96 season, but the fact that these two goaltenders both had save percentages above .920, and that final series, those 7 games, both goaltenders were fantastic. So I felt like both of them warranted being at this point on the board. You guys can let me know your thoughts, of course, in the comment section below, which I know people will. But yeah, for me, McLean and Richter from 94 both belong on this side of the board. That being said, moving on to number 6. And we are into the 2003 New Jersey Devils. So 2003, Marty Brodeur, his numbers during that 03 run, pretty darn solid. He ends up going 16-7 with a .927 save percentage. So, yeah, those numbers are solid for a goaltender who is he was a first ballot Hall of Famer, to no one's surprise, the all-time leader in wins and shutouts and everything else. And so, yeah, Marty Brodeur to me in 2003, I'll put that at number 6 on the board. So Brodeur 6-14. The 2000 run I didn't end up putting onto this board, but that's 2 of the 3 Stanley Cup runs for Brodeur that to me qualify for this top 17. Number 5, and we are back to Patrick Roy, and we are back to another Conn Smythe win. Patrick Roy in 1993 was ridiculous, and in overtime, what were they, 10-0? So Patrick Roy ends up 16-4 with a .929 save percentage as the unlikely Stanley Cup champion Montreal Canadiens, and what would be the last Stanley Cup win for Canada to date. It was 30 years ago, but that run was insane. And again, if that game went to overtime, yeah, Patrick Roy was winning it, and you're done. So if game's going to overtime and you're packing up your stuff, you're like, no, Montreal wins. Why? Because Patrick Roy right there, number 33. It's his net. It's overtime. It's done. It's finished. And that was generally the case. Patrick Roy was fantastic. So, number 4 on the board. Another Conn Smythe winner. 1987. So, for Ron Hextall, that run, he ends up going 15-11. He had a .908 save percentage. So, the save percentage much lower than the others on the board. However, this is the 80s. During the 80s, of course, we had lots and lots of goal scoring. Any save percentage above 900 at that stage was considered fantastic. Hextall's run, too. Without him in net for Philadelphia, they're nowhere near the Stanley Cup final. And the fact that they pushed the Edmonton Oilers, who were stacked from top to bottom, it's Hextall. Hextall won a lot of respect during that run to the Stanley Cup. And he was out of his mind in that final as well. But, I mean, while Hextall, a lot of his other extracurriculars ended up overshadowing his playoff acumen, and I think his goal-scoring ability as well kind of overshadowed it a bit. Great puck handler. And a lot of the goalies on this board, very good stick handlers. But, yeah, Hextall, he was in the zone. So I know that it might have some people like, wait, what? But to me, Hextall's run in 87 was absolutely fantastic. I know a lot of people watching this weren't around then. Trust me, it was a fantastic run. And for Philly, they don't win the cup. They got as close as you can without winning it. Number 3. 2003. It's J.S. Giguere. The J.S. Giguere run in 2007 does not get on the board. But the Giguere one does, and he won the Conn Smythe that year. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 Conn Smythes on the board so far. J.S. Giguere in 2003. What a story. This was a goaltender who had been highly thought of at the time he was drafted, had bounced around a little bit. And in Anaheim, he just found a home. And that 2003 run, again, that kind of a run can build a reputation for a goalie. And it really did build that reputation for Giguere. That Stanley Cup final in 2003 between Giguere and Brodeur, the home team won all 7 games. It was a very entertaining final, which is interesting because, of course, both Anaheim and New Jersey were known for their defensive styles at various points. But in 2003, both teams, that final was entertaining. Was it defensive? Well, yeah. Anaheim that year was playing a defensive style, but Giguere made sure that he bailed them out. You can play back a lot if you have Giguere with his .946 save percentage. So absolutely ridiculous numbers, which I will say this. If Giguere hadn't put in that performance, Brodeur probably wins that Conn Smythe trophy, but they just couldn't deny Giguere that year. Number 2, from 2011. So going back to 2011 and Tim Thomas. I looked at the numbers, and it's interesting because the 2013 run by Tuukka Rask, his numbers are not that far behind Thomas's, but obviously Rask's not on the board here. Thomas in 2011 ends up 16-9 with a .940 save percentage and wins himself the Conn Smythe trophy, and it was just fantastic. The one thing with Boston was their penalty kill against Tampa was a little bit sketchy, but in Game 7 they didn't have to worry about it. There were no penalties in that game. And Thomas stood on his head throughout the playoffs and kind of dragged a Boston Bruins team that was good, not great. He drags them to a Stanley Cup. And that's really the key thing for this board is goaltenders who drag their team to a Stanley Cup that is unexpected. Which brings us to number 1, which will be expected by most. But in 2012, so after Tim Thomas had that run, and I thought, well, nobody's ever going to have a run like that. Jonathan Quick in 2012 wins the Conn Smythe, ends up with a 16-4 record, also a .946 save percentage. So some ridiculous save percentages here: .946, .941, .946 here, and a .941 over here as well. Those are absolutely crazy numbers. Goaltender that saves 94% of the shots at the net. That is impressive. And again, when you look back to some of the old numbers, the game was a little bit more wide open. And what we're seeing now is that save percentages are coming down again. It's cyclical. But I did my best to rank goaltenders. And again, there were some honorable mentions. So I'll go back to that. Irbe in 2002. Belfour in 1999 for the Dallas Stars. Ranford in 1990 for the Oilers. Vasilevskiy in 2020 for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Billy Smith in 1982 had an amazing run. He won the Conn Smythe in 1983. And honorable mention as well to Cam Ward and various other goaltenders as well. Binnington in 2019. There's a lot. There are a lot of goaltenders that, as I said, I could have done this up to 40, but I had to stop. I had to stop somewhere, and at 17, I was like, okay, now we're done. I need to get the video done. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.